Group podcast with our host, Sherry from Storehouse Media Group. Sherry, how are you? And know you're excited about our guest today.
I am. I'm very excited because I'm a big fan of Donna Brown. And Donna Brown is, we've known each other for a while and worked on three of her books. They became award winning and bestsellers. And they're volume one, two, and three of Behind and Beyond the Badge. And Donna, I'm going to let you talk about them because you're the author.
Well, thank you. And thank you very much, both of you, having me on today. I never turned down a chance, wanted to talk about the books, and that's what I'm passionate about, the underlying theme of the books. And as Sherry knows, in 2016, our country wasn't enthralled with the law enforcement profession as a whole. And I kind of got angry about that and couldn't figure out what I could do to change that perspective. So I came up with the idea of telling stories of individual first responders, what it's like to do the job, really, not what TV portrays or movies. And as I got into that idea, I realized that I really needed to include all first responders. So in the books are firefighters, dispatchers, our EMS people. And I realized too, I couldn't have done my job over the years without each and every one of those. So they're most definitely included in all of the books. And when I reached out to people about doing this, which in volume one, everybody was retired because I wasn't sure uh, how administrations would react to them actually opening up and spilling the beans, not in a negative way about the department, but the mental and physical toll that those jobs can take. So volume one took off more than I ever imagined, and I really had no intention of writing more than one. And Sherry and I talked about that, and I was like, okay, I'll do volume two, which I did, and a couple of years later, volume three. So,
And your
Wow.
background, all those years, fill in the blanks, is Donna had been a police officer with the Tallahassee Police Department. And 10 years of that, she was detective sergeant of the homicide unit.
correct,
And
correct.
so she knows a thing or two about law enforcement. And that Tallahassee Police Department, tell you, that place hops. It's a hopping department.
Excuse me, it does. And I taught all of the citizens police academies from the time our department started them until the time I retired. And I just see those anytime I get a chance to talk about first responder jobs. Like I said at the very beginning, I'm there because people really don't have a true concept. Their concept of what first responders do is based solely on television and film. And I realize that's entertainment, but a lot of times it's not realistic. Which working in homicide, I wish I could have processed a crime scene, made an arrest, gone to court, all of that in basically 49 minutes that TV does, but it's much longer than that.
Mm-hmm. And the biggest challenge of writing the books, what do you think?
I was brand new to it. I had no idea. I just kind of went with the idea, started writing, and an individual who's actually in volume one, she referred me to Sherry. And with Sherry's background as well, being in law enforcement, we just kind of clicked. Um, it was still new for me. I mean, the technical side, absolutely, I knew nothing about. So it was a great learning experience for me as well.
Well, I will say that you were the perfect student. I mean, you wanted to learn and you would email me, you had questions, and it wasn't just questions and answers. By the time she got to the second book, I went through the second book and I'm like, oh my gosh, this student has graduated. It was so good. It was so deep and so rich. First book was great. In the second book, it's like, wow, you really paid attention. And it was great to see the growth you had as a writer.
Thank you. Thank you. And I owe that to you, but I am trainable, or I like to think that I am. Um, and I am proud of all three books, but I will have to say, one, I think I improved obviously as a writer as I progressed through the volumes. But with volume three, volume one and volume two, the people in it, either I had personal ties to uh, were within the state of Florida, which is where I live and worked. And so with volume three, I wanted to kind of get it out of Florida. And so I just started reaching out to people. I spent a lot of time on social media and found some really amazing individuals with amazing first responder careers and just reached out, and they jumped on board. And I mean, so I've met some amazing people as well through the process. So
Mm.
volume three, I think, is really people really opened up, and we got pretty deep with the personal side of doing those jobs.
And it's such a challenge because of the PTSD that can happen, all the traumatic experiences that you can see as a police officer for sure, but and a firefighter and EMS, all of them. But I don't get that we need to get better training. We need to look at specifically enough. Can people handle this job when they go through the stress test of taking a test? Because I think that there's certain people that might have already had experiences of PTSD before taking on the job, that it's really not a good deal because it's going to trigger things and make things a lot worse. What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree with you. And of course, I was hired in 1979. I was one of only 5 women at Tallahassee Police Department at the time. So throw that other stressor in there. The community itself wasn't used to having females in uniform. Throw that stressor in there, and you bring up something. I'm very, very passionate about humanizing the badge, which was kind of the impetus for writing the books. And that has grown now into what I'm doing now, which is what you bring up, the mental health side for first responders. And sure, people bring a lot of baggage into any job. I mean, um, adverse childhood experiences. I don't know if you've heard that term. I mean,
Yes.
in every class I've taught, I mean, there's at least one. And then in myself, I grew up with an alcoholic parent.
Mhm.
So that right there is something that, whether you realize it or not, carries over into your job. So that's another stressor to put into the rucksack. So there's a lot of things that go into that rucksack before you really even start the job.
Yeah. And I just think that we really have to look at things mental health wise, monitor those things, and then, especially if you already have triggers, you already have a situation where you have gone through adverse childhood or a serious traumatic event before taking on that job. There needs to be more mental health checks, more opportunities to discuss things and really look at things so that it doesn't go out of control. They should look in the military the same way. Really should.
And I think we're seeing great progress. We still have a long way to go for sure. And it's about getting buy-in from the top down. And there are some amazing leaders across this country who are doing just that and making mental health for their employees a priority. And they're seeing better retention and all the positive things because they are paying attention to that. And we have to normalize struggle. Everybody struggles. If I asked you and Sherry right now, name one thing that you're struggling with, it might take you a minute, but if you're honest, you could name one thing, whether that's an unruly teenager or, for kids, it's they're having a tough time at school, but everybody struggles, and we have to
Mhm.
normalize that. We have to normalize talking about it.
I agree. Good, Sherry.
Yeah. So, you talk and about the job you're doing now, which is the Second Alarm Project. Tell us about that.
It's an amazing nonprofit organization here in Florida, and they reached out to me. And as I said earlier, if you look at the logo and the name of it, Second Alarm Project, most people, it is fire related. And when they first created the organization, it was about fire services and the mental health side and getting training out there, peer support, those types of things. But they started getting a phenomenal amount of requests for training from all first responders. So that's the deputy director reached out to me one day, and she's like, "Hey, I've read your books and we know you're passionate about this. We know you have a training background. What do you think?" And honestly, it was a perfect fit. It was just something I couldn't say no to, and I'm ecstatic about what I'm doing now.
That's fantastic. Now, how has Sherry helped you write your books that you can tell about Sherry? Go ahead.
Well, like she talked about earlier, I knew absolutely zero about writing a book. I had always been told I was a pretty good writer, but when you get to where you want to publish, I was not a good writer. And just the little things of, you know, it was interesting to learn. And I think too, and I tell people this, if you do anything when you're writing a book, get a good editor. And that's what Sherry was so much more than that for me, but editor teaching me how to write. I would encourage people to use Sherry. And I think a couple of my friends, or at least one I know for sure, has used Sherry. Like I said, I would encourage anybody to do that and to use Sherry.
Fantastic. All right. Sherry, last question before we say goodbye.
Last question is, we worked on these 3 books and, again, coming from law enforcement, I'm just as passionate about them as you. Well, you wrote them, but I'm very passionate about the topic. What is the one message you want everybody to walk away with after reading those books?
Well, two sides. For those outside of the first responder world, whether it's families or just the general public, I would encourage them to read the books because it's not what they think. And also, a lot of first responders don't share when they come home. And I actually had a retired first responder start reading the books. And then he and his wife started reading volume 2 together. And she asked him one night, do you feel the way these officers do in this book? And excuse me, he said, yes, I do. And he said it just changed the whole dynamics of their relationship about communications. And like I said earlier, it's not what TV and media and all that portray, and not downing that because that's great entertainment. But I'd encourage people to read it. On the first responder side, I'd love people to read them because if anything, it lets them know they're not alone. They're not alone in their thoughts. They're not alone in, how I feel. And when it comes to mental health struggles or struggles in general, that they're not alone.
Okay. Best place we can purchase your books is Amazon, right? Or do you have a website too?
Correct.
Do you have a website as well?
I do. It's behindandbeyondthebadge.com, and there's links there to order the books. But yes, Amazon is the best. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, although I don't participate too much anymore, just running out of time to do that. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. So I'm out there if anybody wants to reach out.
Excellent. That was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley